Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. On satellite imagery, we've got moisture that was streaming northeastward here and continued to move inland today. That brought the snow from Bristol Bay northeastward, Kuskokwim Valley, into Cook Inlet, areas of Cook Inlet, and then northward, especially the Susitna Valley, on up across the central Tanana Valley, with the heavier snowfall amounts on the southern slopes of the Alaska Range there, lighter to the north, but clouds and areas of snow extending up just about Arctic Village. Otherwise, a dry day today across the 40-mile country in toward the portion of the Copper River Basin. And this is the remnants of a very weak front that is just about completely dissipated. That kept a few clouds here over the northern panhandle, some isolated or some scattered light shower conditions as well that extended back Yakutat and along the North Gulf Coast. And rolling that into motion again, you can see kind of a break right out through here. Earlier today, starting to close off a little bit as more moisture flows northward faster than this moisture is exiting the area there. But you can see southern southeast coast pretty good, areas of sunshine, as well as up over the Yukon there from Whitehorse over toward Northway. And also some breaks around Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay as the next system pushes eastward out here, driving that front from the Komodorskis earlier on in toward the, actually past Shimia now and Attu, but still west of Amchitka and Kiska, with rain and wind on the increase here for the Adak and Atka area. And St. Paul, a few snow showers today with rain and snow, mostly rain showers actually, here for the eastern Aleutians, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. And rolling that into motion again, cold air back up here over the northwest part of the state from the St. Lawrence Island area. Northerly winds 15 to 30 miles an hour there. Temperatures running 0 to 5 above. And that cold temperature pattern all the way up across the Seward Peninsula and the central western Arctic coast and the North Slope. On the chart today, weak trough up there brought some flurries there to the central Arctic coast there, locally southward across the North Slope, and then cut off at the Brooks Range. Cold high pressure there along the Russian Far East coast, and that northeast flow with the colder air back out here to the northwest, but drier conditions here with the trough right through this area and that snow zone sliding northeastward. About a foot of snow falling last 24 hours at Hatcher Pass. Otherwise, the Susitna Valley seeing anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of new snow. And then mounts taper off as you head to the southwest, also to the northeast here. Areas of rain and snow, or rain and snow showers along the North Gulf Coast. And as I mentioned, into the northern panhandle, but pretty good down to the south with increasing sunshine the farther south you went. And some breaks here with that low, and it was more of a showery pattern for the eastern Aleutians, which ends about Nikolsky. And then there's that next system pushing rain and snow and wind in across the central Aleutians. And for tonight, that'll continue to advance eastward and begin to take a swing to the northeast there. So look for rain to spread from Atka over to into the Nikolsky area, but probably not quite making it into Dutch Harbor until sometime Saturday morning. And a little farther to the east, there'll be a break ahead of that system here occurring over the Alaska Peninsula and the into the Bristol Bay area. Still look for some rain and snow showers to the peninsula, but you won't see the 3/4 of an inch rainfall intensity that Falls Pass had earlier today. That was the amount they had in the last 24 hours. Still a chance of some scattered rain and snow showers for Kodiak Island, as well as the Alaska Range now, with this moisture actually becoming more intermittent and showery and lighter in nature as it continues to slide off to the northeast there. Colder temperatures back to the west and northwest here in the clear area, and with the wind, lower wind chills as well, St. Lawrence Island up to about the Bering Strait, but got light winds over the northwest valleys there with mostly clear skies. Should be a pretty chilly overnight tonight here, or for late Friday night, early Saturday morning up there in the northwest, and then some clouds and flurries there for the central and eastern Arctic coast. Looking at forecast for tomorrow, this front pushes northward, and snow and blowing snow back in the picture. In fact, winter storm warnings are out for tomorrow through tomorrow night for St. Lawrence Island up to the Bering Strait coast. Winter weather advisories are out for the Yukon Delta and eastern Norton Sound there in that zone to the Donato Hills. That kicks into effect at noon tomorrow and will stay out through Saturday night as well. Otherwise, southwest flow, warmer temperatures, mixed precipitation pattern in the pink shaded area there down to possibly Kodiak Island, although I think it'll mostly be in the form of rain at sea level. And with the warm front, of course, periods of rain, drizzle, or even some fog in there from the Alaska Peninsula back out toward the eastern Aleutians, and a more steadier rain for the Adak and Atka area with the associated front, which will turn to showers, and then definitely colder temperatures farther out to the west there for Shemya with rain and snow showers changing over to just plain snow. Otherwise, just the remnants of the moisture up here to the northeast, just a few scattered snow showers up in that area with mostly cloudy skies. But a pretty good day here coming up for the southeast interior. Just a few clouds into Cook Inlet. Manages to sit in the valley looking really good. Increasing clouds in the afternoon, some of this moisture slipping into southern Cook Inlet again during the latter part of the afternoon. And then for Sunday, that progresses east far enough to bring a pretty good chance of return to some precipitation here for the Susitna Valley. And then that gets mixed over northern Cook Inlet and the Turnagain Arm with an area of just rain here from the southern Kenai Peninsula across Kachemak Bay, Kodiak Island, down along the Alaska Peninsula. A dry day for the most part here for the southeast coast. Coastal areas might pick up a chance of a shower with more cloudiness there, as that moisture, really nothing pushing it in, so probably stay near or off the coast there through the day Sunday. So that means it'll be kind of a partly to mostly day sunny-wise there for the Panhandle with light winds out west. Low pressure over the northwest Bering. Good west-northwest or west-southwest winds coming around, carrying colder temperatures aloft and at the surface here with snow showers and first leading edge of that right through here coming across the Pribilofs. A little more active up there for St. Lawrence Island and a couple of more farther out to the west. Lows for tonight, anywhere from 15 to 20 below or so here up over the northern interior where the colder air is locked in place. Below zero down to St. Lawrence Island, about 5 below, but throw some wind in with that. Otherwise, teens through the central interior, mid to upper 20s here as you head south toward the coast to near freezing for Kodiak, lower to mid 30s for the Aleutians, lower to mid 30s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow below the zero mark there from roughly the northern Koyukuk Valley and about the Kivalina area back across the North Slope and Arctic coast. Contrast that with upper 30s, lower 40s here along the North Gulf Coast and upper 50s over the southern Panhandle. And then the lows for Sunday morning looks mostly in the teens here through the central interior. South, of course, 20s, becoming lower 30s here at Kodiak Island. And up to the north there, pretty chilly night, 20 to 25 below, especially for the eastern North Slope and Arctic coast. With the Panhandle mostly in the lower 30s, some areas warmer. Highs will rise into the 40s once again, 30s over southern Alaska, lower 30s in the central areas, and edging up to or above zero along the Arctic coast up there with 20s for St. Lawrence Island.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
We've got marginal VFR and IFR here to be sure out over the southwest coast, on up in across the Yukon Delta, back out across St. Lawrence Island with the snow and blowing snow there. Also the central western Arctic coast, North Slope areas down to about the Brooks Range. VFR south of the mountains there in across the Kobuk-Selawik Valley areas, Kotzebue, Seward Peninsula, narrowing as you head up along the south side of the Brooks Range to the northeast. And then you get into a swath of IFR. And also along the Alaska Range, of course, some IFR. They'll extend mostly marginal on over the western range with VFR, Kodiak Island, on up along the coastal areas to inland a little bit there for the southeast coast. Then for the afternoon, that breaks out. See, it really retreats back to the west with VFR right into the southeast interior, northern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, lingering IFR possible here down along the western and southwestern inlet and toward Kachemak Bay. Otherwise, the main IFR out here to the west now with that next system holding an IFR over the northern Bering Sea along the coast, back down into the eastern and central Aleutians. And then for Sunday morning, IFR along and south of the Brooks Range now, pretty extensive with that front pushing eastward here right across the Kuskokwim Valley area and the Yukon Delta into Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula on out to about Atka. More IFR here streaming into Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast, and also along and south of the Alaska Range and over the Talkeetnas, but VFR for the Wrangell Mountains, central eastern Tanana Valley, North Slope, Arctic Coast, and the Panhandle looks pretty good for VFR right through Sunday afternoon. Marginal VFR getting pretty close to the coastline. Also lingering IFR for Prince William Sound, areas of VFR over the eastern interior 40-mile country, and a big bunch of IFR here from Cook Inlet and the Susitna Valley back to the west in the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, and also up along the Brooks Range. Passes Anaktuvuk tomorrow and Adigan, both VFR. Looking good there. Lake Clark and Merrill, kind of a marginal VFR kind of day coming up with rainy, same forecast, marginal VFR most of the time, and windy, though, VFR. And Isabel and Mentasta, see pretty clear skies, actually. And for Tanita, same forecast, VFR tomorrow. Better VFR than what you saw today. And then for Portage, also VFR, Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 to 6,000 feet here over the southeast coast, and 4,000 feet up into the Gulf of Alaska, 2,000 right along the coastline, as is the surface. That extends back here along the Alaska Peninsula, up toward Cape Newenham, and then off to the northwest there, north of the Pribilofs. And with that head of that front, warmer air sliding up toward the eastern Aleutians. And as far as icing goes, areas of the main icing will be out here along the west coast. Could be some isolated area or a little bit more extensive area of moderate rime icing, and scattered here to the east and to the back of the front there, with areas of possible icing there for the central Aleutians. All the way back, this more of a mixed icing condition back out towards Shemya. And looking at the jet stream here, we've got basically high pressure up over the east, up over the Gulf of Alaska into the Panhandle. And again, this is going to make for a pretty good day tomorrow in these areas into the southeast interior. Westerly jet about 70 knots there, mostly affecting the Arctic coast and the North Slope areas, but ridging back to the west. And then we've got this strong jet here coming across the Pacific, takes a southwesterly turn here and then splits right along about 165 west, with one branch, a stronger branch, heading southeastward, and then a weaker one rotating back around, but catching the Yukon Delta coast. Now will be bringing that portion of the front on in and then lifting northward. 3,000 or 9,000 foot wind flow, up to 40 knots here along the southwest coast, 25 to 30 in over the southwest interior, 35 knots up there, increases 50 to as high as 70 knots over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for 3,000 feet, not quite as strong, 40 to 50 for the Aleutians, and 30 to 40 here along the southwest coast. Lighter winds over the eastern interior, really light winds, Gulf of Alaska, in across the southeast coast, and then gradually increasing up the east side of the state. And as far as turbulence goes, really not enough wind to generate any significant turbulence to speak of here for the Arctic coast, Brooks Range. Most of the central eastern interior areas, Panhandle looking pretty smooth with those light winds, as well as the North Gulf Coast, even Kodiak Island. But where the winds are stronger, of course, that's where the areas of moderate chop will be seen in the shaded area.
Winter, cold, wet, and deadly. Every year, snowstorms strand hundreds of people in their cars, isolate thousands in their homes, and kill those who are unprepared. In this film, you will see and hear true stories about 6 people caught in severe winter weather and isolated from help. Ed and Paul Maluski were going to their cabin to button it up for the winter when it began to snow.
The storm hit about halfway up the mountain. By the time we got about a mile from our cabin, we kept getting stuck every 10 feet.
We were always out digging, which got us wet. Then the snow got real heavy, and you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you. It was pretty clear the Bronco wasn't going to make it. So we figured we'd walk to a neighbor's cabin. It wasn't real far, and we know that area like the back of our hands.
The funny thing is, everything changes at night. And with the blizzard, well, you couldn't tell which way you were going. I thought I knew, but boy, I just couldn't tell for sure.
Dad! Leave this back here! We don't need it! There's food in the cabin!
You know, it was funny. I'd be thinking real clear for a while, and then just didn't know what I was doing or where I was going. I couldn't even remember Paul's name, my own boy, and I couldn't remember his name.
I got worried wading through that snow. Dad was really beat. He could barely keep up. I started thinking about things I'd never thought about before. I fell and dropped our flashlight and didn't pick it up right away like you normally would. I knew we were getting delirious then. Then we hit that gate. Well, it's nowhere near the cabin.
We've gone too far! Let's go back to the Bronco!
Paul, we can't go back. We wouldn't make it. I wouldn't make it. We've got to find that cabin or we can't make it. Now, come on, we've got to find that cabin.
From then on, I just kept thinking, you gotta keep going. You gotta keep pushing.
I saw that cabin and said one long prayer. I could hardly believe we finally found it. We walked for 2.5 hours and it was less than a half mile from the Bronco. All I could think was, we had to get inside. We finally got in. And then we didn't say anything at all. We didn't talk.
Ed and Paul had become victims of hypothermia, a physical condition caused by a person's body losing more heat than it produces. The result? A dangerously low body temperature. When Ed and Paul were outside, the conditions were perfect for hypothermia to set in. It was cold, and they were tired and wet. First, their bodies tried to generate more heat to combat the cold. They began to shiver. It was a losing battle. The constant exposure to cold, wet weather defeated this first line of their body's defense. Then, in order to keep the remaining heat concentrated in the body core, the brain, heart, and lungs, their bodies began to cut down blood circulation to their arms and legs. This gave their vital organs a fighting chance to continue functioning. But it also caused the loss of muscle control in their hands, legs, and arms. As their natural defenses gradually began to break down, they became more confused and disoriented. If they had not found the cabin, the cold would have defeated all their body's defenses, and they would have died. In this kind of emergency, the first thing to do is get out of the cold. Then, carefully begin rewarming the body. The most important areas to rewarm first are those areas nearest the body core, the sides of the chest, the neck, the groin, and the head. These are the areas of highest heat loss and highest heat absorption. Warming these areas first lets the body build back and hold its heat, starting with the body core and gradually spreading to the rest of the body. Ed and Paul did not rewarm themselves correctly. They began by warming their hands and feet, and that could have killed them. Warming the body's extremities first forces cold blood to flow back to the body core. The result is usually death. Paul went to bed that night shivering uncontrollably because his body had not been rewarmed properly. Both men needed medical assistance desperately. It's a miracle they survived. Part of the miracle was the cabin they broke into. It was owned by a man who believed in being prepared for anything.
Once we got warmed up, we found plenty of wood for the fire. Besides, there was a propane tank to heat the cabin too.
There was plenty of food, enough to last us a couple of weeks. And you could eat it right out of the can. You didn't need a stove to cook it on.
Nothing. Well, they know we're gone. Yeah, they should.
Candles, flashlights, lanterns. All were on hand with plenty of batteries and fuel to keep them working. Ed and Paul even found a battery-powered radio. It was a relief to hear that rescuers were out looking for them. The cabin had a well-stocked first aid kit, too. Ed and Paul were stranded way up in the mountains, far from any help. But even in a city, snowstorms can be dangerous, especially for the elderly. The elderly can fall victim to hypothermia even at home. It's essential for them to maintain warm room temperatures of 68 degrees Fahrenheit or more. Continued exposure to low room temperatures can easily cause older people to become hypothermic, and it is very difficult to detect.
Your turn now.
They usually don't shiver as hypothermia takes hold, but their breathing may become shallow and their heartbeat may slow down. Either of these symptoms during cold weather means medical help is needed immediately. The best cure, of course, for anyone is prevention. Stay warm all the time, eat well and regularly, and keep physically fit. These factors will help protect you from winter cold.
Did you get back to the clinic this morning?
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Throughout the week, we've seen the ice progress back to the south and to the west here, from now south of St. Lawrence Island, fair distance south of St. Lawrence Island, back to the southeast here, and a ways south of Nunivak Island, and even some additional ice had grown into Bristol Bay. And for the marine forecast for tomorrow, kind of light east wind for the eastern North Gulf Coast, and then northwest 15. Light winds turn north at 15 for the south coast, seas 7 to 8 feet. And north to northwesterlies for the central and southern inside waters at about 15 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. Northern Canal, though, a little brisker at 20 knots with seas at 4 feet. And then for Sunday, they'll swing around to the south at 20 and fall back to about 10 knots for Stevens Passage, northwest 15, Clarence Strait, as well as along the south coast here. And then westerlies 10 to 15 knots with 5 to 6 foot seas up on the north coast, so a couple of light wind days coming up. And then for Prince William Sound, northwest turn north, but these winds all light at 10 knots tomorrow with seas running 2 feet in the Sound, 6 to 7 feet for the North Gulf Coast, east 15, Barren Islands on into Kamishak Bay, north 10 for Cook Inlet. And for the outlook for Sunday, swinging around to the south, north of the Forelands, only about 10 knots, but picking up to 20 knots from the south here. Southern Cook Inlet to Kachemak Bay, southeast 20 for the Barren Islands, and south winds now, but only coming up to about 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast, 10 knots for Prince William Sound. And for Kodiak Island, there on the east side, east at 15, Shelikof Strait south at 10, and east at those 15-knot easterlies extend all the way down to Castle Cape, then they go southwest at 20, on down around to Cape Sarachev. Small craft advisories on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, but only 10 knots in Bristol Bay. Those pick up to 20 knots. The seas build to about 6 feet there for the bay on Sunday. Southwest 25 to 30 for the peninsula, and those 30-knot winds all the way up to Sitkinak, and then drop back a little bit, but still small craft advisory winds there for the east side of Kodiak, and southwest 20 for Shelikof Strait. And for the Fox Islands, south to southwest 25 for Unalaska Island. Otherwise, southwest 25 to 30 knots there to the west, all the way out to Adak and Atka. Seas 9 to 14 feet, and then some 40-knot winds there, far western Aleutians with 20-foot seas. And that holds through Sunday as well. Not much change there. Stay pretty windy out west, and then westerly small craft advisory level winds here, 25 to 30 knots for the remainder of the Aleutians, and seas running anywhere from 13 or 12 to 15 feet. And up along the southwest coast, looks like southerly winds return, and so we're not going to see much more of an advance of the ice conditions out there with a south to southeast wind pattern coming in, 25 to 30 knots there for the coast, up to 40 knots for St. Matthew Island out of the southeast. He's built at 14 feet, south 25 for the Perbeloffs, and then easterly gales coming back in, and again that winter storm warning also kicking in for tomorrow there for St. Lawrence Island. And for the Sunday outlook, southwest 25 from the Pueblos right into Kuskokwim Bay there and the remainder of the coast. Northern Nunivak Island coming down to about 20 knots from the south. And so you see a dramatic or a lot less wind on Sunday for St. Lawrence Island than you will tomorrow. Otherwise, gales hold here for the St. Matthew Island area. And then for the central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west winds 15 knots, even lighter on the west side, turning north from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson at about 15, then northeast 20 here. They'll be gradually increasing throughout the morning and the early afternoon, but only to about 20 knots the way it looks at this point in time. And then for the Sunday outlook, east winds increase here all across the coast, 20 knots from the east side there to the central coast and up to 30 knots here on the west side, all the way down to Cape Thompson, and then Cape Thompson southward, south winds at 20. And for tonight again, looking for gradually diminishing snow, changing to showers and tapering off, especially really getting isolated here in the southwest. More clearing and colder temperatures continue, and then throw some wind in with that there for the Seward Peninsula into St. Lawrence Island, with temperatures falling maybe to 5, 6, 7 below zero there for Savunga, and dry for the Panhandle, but still a lot of clouds, scattered showers along the coast. And then for tomorrow, that next winter storm warning coming into the St. Lawrence Island area, Bering Strait coast, with winter weather advisories there for the Yukon Delta, up across eastern Norton Sound to the Nolato Hills. Rain and snow coming into the southwest. And for the outlook on Sunday, looks pretty good for the Panhandle. This whole front pushes snow eastward.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.